Before we go any further, stop for just a moment. If you're new here, take a second, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and stay with me until the very end. Not because I'm about to show you something dramatic or shocking, but because what you're about to hear is real in a way most people never talk about. And sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that stay with us the longest. Every like, every comment, every subscription helps me keep sharing stories like this one. Stories that don't scream for attention, but instead whisper truths that many people live through in silence. So stay with me, because this isn't just a story. It's a reflection of life, of family, of emotional distance, and of the moments that quietly change everything without warning. My name is Alicia Andred, and what I'm about to share is something I carried for a very long time, before I could even put it into words. Not because it's forbidden, not because it's dramatic, but because it reveals something most people don't want to admit, even to themselves. That sometimes, families don't fall apart loudly. Sometimes they dissolve quietly, while still sitting at the same table. And that's exactly what happened to mine. At the time, I was raising 2 children on my own. From the outside, we looked like any other family. 3 people under one roof. Meals together. Routines. Responsibilities. The appearance of normal life. But appearances can be deceiving, because behind closed doors, something much more fragile was unfolding. Something I didn't fully understand, until it was too late to ignore. My daughter, Elena, was 16. She was intelligent in a way that made teachers impressed and parents slightly intimidated. She had a strong personality, sharp, independent, and emotionally guarded. She rarely showed vulnerability. Instead, she built walls made of sarcasm, short answers, and silence that felt heavier than words. But I knew her better than anyone. I knew she felt everything too deeply. She just didn't know how to express it safely. So she didn't. My son Jonathan was 12. Completely different from his sister. Soft-hearted. Curious. Always asking questions that had no simple answers. He still believed the world made sense if you looked at it closely enough. He asked things like why people argue, why adults look tired all the time, and whether life was supposed to feel confusing. And sometimes, I didn't have answers for him. Not the kind he needed. On paper, we were a family. In reality, we were 3 people slowly drifting through the same space, without really meeting each other emotionally. And I didn't notice how far it had gone until one ordinary evening changed everything. It was a Friday. The kind of Friday that doesn't feel special in any way. No celebrations. No warnings. No sense that anything important was about to happen. Just another exhausting end to another long week. I came home later than usual that night. Work had drained every bit of energy I had left, and I remember thinking I just needed to get through dinner, maybe sit down for a few minutes, and then sleep. That was the plan. Simple. Predictable. Safe. Or at least, that's what I believed. The house felt quiet when I entered. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that already feels slightly disconnected. Like everyone is physically present somewhere in the building, but emotionally elsewhere. Dinner was still being prepared, or at least delayed. I don't even remember who said what first. That's how unremarkable it seemed at the beginning. And yet, it became the night that changed everything. Eventually, we all sat down together. The table was full of food, but not full of connection. Elena sat on one side, barely looking up. Jonathan sat across from her, poking at his plate like it might answer him if he stared long enough. And I sat between them, trying to feel like a bridge between 2 worlds that were slowly pulling apart. Jonathan broke the silence first. Mom, why does food always taste a little different every time you cook it? It was such a simple question, but it hit me in a way I didn't expect. Because it reminded me that he was still trying to find consistency in a life that didn't feel stable anymore. I smiled anyway. You know, I said gently, sometimes cooking is a little different every day. Even if the recipe is the same, the feeling behind it changes things. He didn't look fully convinced. Elena, on the other hand, barely reacted. Just a small roll of her eyes. Like even the conversation itself was unnecessary. And in that moment, I felt something subtle but painful. We weren't communicating anymore. We were coexisting. And there is a difference most people only notice when it's already too late. Within minutes, the table shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in small, irritating ways. A comment here, a response there, a misunderstanding that didn't need to escalate, but did anyway. Jonathan complained about something Elena said. Elena responded with a tone that immediately shut down any chance of peace. And suddenly, the table wasn't a family dinner anymore. It was tension sitting in chairs. I tried to stay calm. I tried to keep things from escalating. But exhaustion has a way of weakening patience. And I was already empty. Bills, work pressure, emotional fatigue. Everything was piling up in places no one could see. So when the argument grew sharper, I lost control of my voice. Enough. It came out harsher than I intended. The room went still. Elena looked at me, not just annoyed, but hurt in a way she refused to admit. Then she stood up. No words. Just footsteps. And a door slamming so hard it echoed through the entire house. Jonathan stayed silent, staring down at his plate. And I realized something sitting there in that moment. I hadn't stopped the argument. I had just moved the silence somewhere else. Later that night, I tried to return to normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. Jonathan went to his room quietly, too quietly. Before falling asleep, he hugged me longer than usual. Not the kind of hug children give when they want attention, but the kind they give when they sense something is wrong, even if they don't understand what. That stayed with me longer than I expected. After he slept, I walked through the house. Everything was still. Too still. And that's when I felt it clearly. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't just a bad evening. Something deeper had shifted in our home long before that night. And I had only just become aware of it that I sat in the kitchen. The only sound was the refrigerator humming and the distant ticking of a clock that suddenly felt too loud. Bills were spread across the counter. Half-finished thoughts everywhere. A glass I hadn't finished earlier sat untouched. And in that silence, something inside me surfaced. Not new. Just buried. Loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that exists even when people are around you. I thought about everything I had been carrying since my divorce. About how I told myself I was strong enough. About how I convinced myself I had moved on. But truthfully, I had just learned how to function while broken. And that is not the same thing as healing. That my ex-husband, Carlos, wasn't always distant or hurtful. There was a time he felt like home. Like stability. Like the future I believed in. But over time things changed. Subtle at first. Then undeniable. What once felt safe slowly turned unfamiliar. And when it finally collapsed, it didn't just end a relationship. It changed how I saw trust, love, and even myself. I told myself I had moved forward. I really believed it. But that night in the kitchen proved something I didn't want to admit. You don't always move on. Sometimes you just learn how to carry the weight differently. And then my phone lit up. One notification. A name I hadn't seen in a long time. David. My breath stopped for a second. Because David wasn't just a contact. He was a memory of conversations that made me feel seen when I didn't feel visible to anyone else. He was someone who listened when I had nothing left to say. Someone who understood silence without demanding explanation. I hadn't spoken to him in months. And yet there it was. A message. At the exact moment I felt most alone. And that timing mattered more than I wanted to admit. My first instinct was to ignore it. To close the phone. To protect myself. But loneliness doesn't argue logically. It pulls. Slowly. Quietly. Until even the strongest boundaries begin to feel like they're made of paper. And in that moment, I didn't know what I was about to choose.